It's been a while since I review movies, and there are two movies that caught my attention this week. One is Star Trek Beyond, which is on the theaters, and it's gonna take my parents a little bit of convincing to get me there. And two is a direct-to-DVD movie. As I have reviewed DC movies in the past, I think it would be appropriate to give a review of this movie. I'm a fan of Batman, but I'm a fan of his mainstream counterparts. I've only read 5 comics about Batman. One is Hush, which was awesome. One is The Long Halloween, which was also awesome. Batgirl Year 1, which I also like. Nightwing Year 1, which I like. And finally, The Killing Joke. Now, I read all of those comics back when I was in high school, and even so, I find The Killing Joke to be just not that great. I like Alan Moore's work, especially his movie adaptations, but The Killing Joke, the comic book, is where I need to basically put my hands up. I just don't find it a good comic. The reason why I consider it to be not really a good comic is because I find the premise to be just not fit for me, and it doesn't really execute the premise very well. The premise of The Killing Joke is basically the origin story of the Joker, and how Barbara Gordon, aka Batgirl, becomes Oracle. Both are, in my opinion, done very poorly, but to be fair to the comic, it does give Barbara a role that, in my opinion, a hell of a lot better for her. Seriously, give the Batgirl mantle to anyone else. Barbara's too boring. The focus of the comic is the origin story of the Joker, but that misses the point of the Joker. Every person has a different interpretation of how the Joker should work, so here's my interpretation. The Joker is the most unpredictable villain that you can ever think of. There's nothing predictable about the guy. You can say one thing about him, and the next time he's gonna be the opposite of that thing, just to mess up with your mind. Even when I say that he is unpredictable, he's gonna be predictable in the next few moves, just to mess up with your mind. The Joker's main strength is his ambiguity and the mystery of his insanity and his ability to mindfuck you. So giving him something that is clear and concrete and unambiguous, or even making him human, just completely misses the point of his character, at least in my personal take on him. Now, this would have been fine if they bring up an interesting backstory to the Joker, but the backstory itself is very boring. It's just a comedian who sucks at his job. Come on, Alan Moore, you can do better than that. You made people to take comic books seriously with Watchmen and V for Vendetta. If you're just gonna slap that half-ass backstory on a freaking clown, just goes to show you how much lack of an understanding that you have with him. Now, regardless of whether or not you find The Killing Joke great, or not, the story has an adaptation. So is the adaptation good? Now, one of my main problems with the movie, and actually the comic as well, is that it doesn't really know what it wants to be. It cannot make up their minds of what kind of story that they want to tell. It cannot properly give what kind of purpose does it serve in the grand scheme of things. And it cannot show how the story contributes into the Batman mythos. Aside from turning Batgirl into Oracle, Batman Year 1 contributes in how Batman starts out becoming Batman. Under the Red Hood contributes in how Batman treats his sidekicks and the Red Hood character and his ethics and morality. Hell, even the crappy-ass Bat Blood trilogy at least has a purpose of basically telling the story of Damian Wayne. In my opinion, the only thing that the story of The Killing Joke contributes is Barbara Gordon becoming Oracle, which is a good thing, but the rest are just pointless fluff, which is why you only see the scene of Barbara getting shot by the Joker being more memorable and iconic than other scenes, even if they are 10 times more brutal. The main premise of The Killing Joke is ultimately Joker's backstory, but the main story doesn't really connect to Joker's actual backstory. This movie made it even worse. Barbara Gordon's storyline doesn't really connect with any of them. The storyline was only made to make us sympathize with her, which I think it could have been done without sacrificing half of your running time. So we have 3 unconnected storylines being lumped off into one movie. That, in my opinion, is very concerning. The movie's format is also pretty odd. The movie is served in 2 halves. The first half is entirely about Barbara Gordon, and the second half is about The Killing Joke graphic novel. I thought in that 1 hour time span, you would basically make it entirely The Killing Joke, or Joker's backstory, but you also have to spend it on Barbara Gordon. So let's cover up each halves, and I'm going to start off with The Killing Joke part first. How did it go? Well, it basically served whatever best it can as an animation adaptation of The Killing Joke, but that's unfortunately its main downfall. It has to faithfully represent a story that, in my opinion, wasn't even very good to begin with, and backed up with a premise that, in my opinion, completely misses the point of the character. Now, if you think that Killing Joke's storyline is great, you might enjoy this particular section. However, I personally don't, and I find the story to be just kind of meh to me. But then we have the first half, which is entirely Barbara Gordon. This first half is actually not that bad. It has likable characters, Barbara Gordon is a very competent psychic who can kick ass, the villain is awesome, and it does give a proper context of Barbara Gordon's Batgirl history. One part that I particularly like is how immature Barbara Gordon handles the problem, and how she actually receives proper consequences on being immature. If Damian Wayne was on that same situation, he'll always be right. He'll always get tons and tons of praise, and he'll always be safe, you Mary Sue fuck. The only minor nitpick that I have is the lack of appearance from any other Robins. I mean, seriously, where's Dick Grayson or Tim Drake? Or even better, put Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain in a fucking movie already, DC. The first half is alright on its own, but like I said, it doesn't really serve anything in the grand scheme of things. It does make Barbara more relatable in the end, but she's not brought up anywhere in the end. The movie starts off with her, but ends with Batman and Joker. It would have been just fine if we end the movie with Barbara Gordon in mind, or her transformation into Oracle. Wait, what was that? It's actually in the post-credit scene? Why? Now, there's a little bit of controversy surrounding a particular scene in the movie that takes place in the first half, and that, my friend, is the Bruce/Barbara sex scene. Now, the best way to put my feelings on this issue is basically put it in comparison. It's like seeing Rey suddenly deciding that it would be a good idea to bang Luke Skywalker. While I'm not dismissing the possibility of a relationship between the two, if the relationship was handled with about as much as care as modern Tumblrites, I would probably decide that it would be a good idea to tell Bruce Timm that shoving his monstrously outdated zombie ship to everybody's fucking face is about as pleasant as watching Boku no Pico inside a septic tank. Nobody who lives in 2016 was on board your ship, Mr. Bruce Timm. That ship sank like Titanic. Let it sink down right into the deepest, darkest part of the ocean. Instead, you have to jerk off to your stupid one-true pairing by adding a scene handled so goddamn poorly, even my inner life sounds better in comparison. In conclusion, while a lot of people say that The Killing Joke is great and excellent and everything, this is my personal opinion, and in my opinion, The Killing Joke, both the movie and the comic, it's just not a great story. The original Killing Joke was built on a premise that completely misses the point of a character. If it was done well, I wouldn't mind, but it was so fucking half-assed, it's a disgrace to the Insane Clown. But people like the comics, so well, that's fine. I just don't find it appealing. The movie takes that same flawed storyline and make it even more flawed. The movie's second half is a section that I personally find not so great, and its first half, while completely fine on its own merits, is ruined with lack of supporting characters, and a completely out-of-character act that stems from nothing but poor writing. It's a movie that doesn't know what kind of message that it wants to tell, or what kind of story that it wants to tell. It's even more jumbled than the original Killing Joke comic, and that says quite a lot. Now, a lot of people have been liking this movie and everything like that, so you know what, I'm just gonna give this movie the same rating I give to the comic. I just don't really care. A lot of people like it, a lot of people don't. It's a mixed bag for me. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, great. Well, just go ahead and see the movie if you want to. Don't see the movie if you want to. But art is very subjective. Take my opinions with a grain of salt. What do you guys think of the movie or the comic? Let me know in the comments down below. That's all for the video today. If you like this, you can go ahead and click the like button and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.